Welcome to Hashtag Trending and our program called Project Synapse, a discussion about AI with Marcel Gagne, John Pinard, and me.
Shall we talk?
Yeah. All I can say after
maybe we should.
After the notes you guys sent yesterday, all I can say is, oh my God.
What? Just another week in paradise. This was
exactly
astonishing. Yeah, I was just calm through it all. Nothing big happened, did it?
Nothing at all. It's really, we say this, I think, practically every week, but it's getting really hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some interesting things this week, and we'll go through some of them. I want to start with jobs because that's where we went. We're going to get to Google I/O, but I want to spend some quality time with Google I/O because I think that's,
Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. But jobs, this was the week that everything exploded. I think it was the end of last week, actually. Klarna, which was one of the first companies to come out and say, oh, we've laid off 700 people. We're making all this money now. We're so smart. And your idiot meter goes off going, and it's like one of those movies where, this isn't going to end well.
Do you guys remember
when doesn't.
Do you remember when offshoring IT help desk was a big thing?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember how miserably that failed?
Oh, God, yeah. The first wave of outsourcing is actually pretty similar to this. I was an IT executive at that time. So we'd go in and we signed this great deal with a 3-letter company that sounds like YBM. And we outsourced all this stuff.
Nokia?
And everybody in IT was going on about all the money. Then we discovered that to move a PC, we had to phone them. They had to come in, and the charge for moving a PC from one desk to the other was absolutely phenomenal. I think the only thing that we saved was the VP's job, and that was barely from that great cost-saving exercise. And we learned nothing in many cases, and that is you have to think this stuff through as a process. Later on, people started to understand outsourcing as a process, and you have to think it through. You have to become more efficient because if you don't, the outsourcer will just make you pay for that. And what did they do? Many of them, the best of them, came in and fixed the processes. And ta-da. So anyway, that's the maturity of outsourcing. The immaturity of AI is here. But actually, I dug around for some stories. That's why I picked this up, because I was quite excited to find this. So Klarna, which was the big firm, they laid off 700 people, customer support people, and put them right onto an AI chatbot, which says, people are our greatest asset. That's why we're giving you an AI. The dumbest move possible. Instead of doing what they should have done, which was using AI to enable the customer service people. There's lots of people who've done that. So you put a person on the line, but you give them access to be able to find anything, any piece of information with a great AI search. You give them some hints about how to handle problems. There's lots of things you could do to supercharge your customer support people. And that's what they've had to do. They've had to hire back the people. So my fear is we're all going to take this out of the lesson and say, oh, you see, AI is not going to take my job.
Yeah.
Here's a company, and again, I sound like a broken record on this, but we have got to start looking east. We got to stop looking south and look east, because the Chinese and people from Eastern countries are once again eating our lunch. Foxconn from Taiwan, and everybody knows Foxconn. If you got an iPhone, it's probably made by Foxconn in one of their factories in China. A Taiwan firm, right? They outsource to China.
Most of your devices, or if you've got a smartphone, is built by Foxconn.
They make 40% of the electronic devices in the world. If you're listening to this and you think that AI automation and the jobs that it is going to eliminate, no doubt about it, is a thing that we can wait for, it's already happening in China. And we have this great hubris about China. And you heard it from Vance in the US, the peasants there and stuff like that. This is nonsense. These people have automated factories. They have incredible process control. They're running whole manufacturing where they build a house. They built a skyscraper an apartment building in less than 2 days because they prefabbed it. And and I still see these things of, oh, somebody will send me a big apartment building in China and say, oh, I don't want to live this way. It's nuts. Anyway, what does Foxconn do? They've concentrated on changing the processes. And it's just, if anybody studied lean manufacturing, they've taken lean manufacturing to AI. And what do? They tackle the areas of biggest waste. So what's the biggest waste in lean? For those people that study it, setup. If you actually take a look at the waste in a process, every time, this is why people say you don't multitask. Because when you multitask, you're constantly incurring a setup waste. Every time you look at a new process, you have to get back in line with it and all that sort of stuff. You're better off to do the thing they call flow, which is to work straight through something. You'll be far more effective. Foxconn took their setup. 80% of their setup can now be done with AI, including things that used to be done by humans. In manufacturing, this is everything. A line change, bango, 80% of it's done. And they kept their best people, their most productive people. They didn't go through some massive layoff. And those people that do the 20% are also the smart people whose jobs they've protected, unlike certain other companies that I know where they just do these blanket layoffs and dumb stuff. They've kept their smartest people. Why? To work on becoming more efficient on the rest of it. That's Foxconn. And I never thought I'd say this. IBM. IBM got rid of about 8,000 people. I thought this was going to be one of those truck accidents or one of those disaster movies. And it's not, actually. They've hired another 8,000 people. They got rid of the people where? In HR and areas where you can lose them. And one of the first experiments I did in AI was to automate our manual, our employee manual. You didn't have to call HR. That was really simple. And that was, hallucinations be damned, it was damned accurate. I don't need somebody there to read the manual to an employee. I can give you, if you want a voice, Google will do that now. If you need a form, you don't have to go to somebody in AI to get a form. AI can do that. And they've reduced 8,000 people from areas that were not contributing value. And they've hired about 8,000 people in value-added areas where they make money. So there have been some success
What a novel
stories.
concept.
Yeah. And that, to that extent, maybe there is a growth, but the growth is going to be, it takes away nothing from what I said last week. The growth is going to be in people who can think critically, communicate well, can deal with unstructured problems, and can contribute real value to a customer. Other thing I want to talk to you guys about.
Oh, one more. Just before you walk away from Foxconn here, I want to make a book recommendation, which is going to be weird because you guys are both Apple fanboys and I'm not. Okay. But I'm reading a book right now by a guy named Patrick McGee, as in not from the Avengers. But, and the name really threw me when I heard it. Anyway, it is called Apple in China. And it is absolutely fascinating, absolutely amazing. And it's the story of Apple's rise, like basically from the beginning to the end. And I know we're going to talk about Johnny Ive at some point, but everything about how Apple had to move from North American production, like US production, to Japan and to Taiwan and to China. It's just whales for a while. It's just really fascinating to me. It's just a ride. This is a fascinating, amazing book. And if you want to find out about this whole outsourcing development in other parts of the world, you must read this. I don't usually say this about a tech book, but this thing is a page turner. It is amazing.
Ooh. And we've got to see what the rest of the world is doing, because this North American hubris is going to kill us. We think we're so far ahead. Yeah. And Jensen Huang came out this week and finally had the courage to say what everybody else knows. And that is, this is the dumbest thing we've ever done with this tariff war. And by the way, cutting the Chinese off from the chip, guess what they did? They made their own. So now we have a world where the Chinese still have AI and NVIDIA has,
but they don't need the West.
Exactly. They have 50% less revenue for NVIDIA. Way to go, big boy. And the same thing with Apple. I can never figure out which tariff's on and which tariff's off. It's like that scene from The Karate Kid, Terraphone, Terraphone. And but it appears that the tariffs are now back on to Apple because they haven't moved out of China. And if you've read this book, you know why they haven't moved out of China. But then, Tim Cook's trying to be a good guy. He says, open up in India. And I'll, because they were doing that anyway, but you can go into Trump and offer that to them. I'm going to open up in India. And Trump says, no, don't, not India. And poor America. Yeah. So we're going to bring these Apple devices to America where they don't have enough engineers to run the current economy. And they're suddenly going to find all of these. And we're going to take something that I think somebody told me that the NVIDIA chip has like 1 million parts and they're sourced from all around the world and various integrated pieces of a supply chain that, as we talked about, is totally designed to be as efficient as possible. And the iPhone is exactly the same thing. It's making stuff that Steve Jobs would come in. Remember in the first days of the iPhone, the stories that came out about Jobs coming in saying, I want you to have a screen like this. And people would say, hasn't been invented yet. And he'd say, get on it. Which brings us to Johnny. We might as well talk about Johnny Ives.
Let's talk about Johnny Ives. One of the things in the book that they mentioned was that the guy who actually, Steve Jobs took over from after Steve Jobs got fired, going through the whole process, he made some quip about the idea that, as he was leaving the company and Steve Jobs was coming in, he said later on in an interview, he said something along the lines of, my tombstone will read, here lies the man who hired Johnny Ives.
Sting.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody knows about this. And that is that Johnny Ives joined Apple about the same time as Steve Jobs. They were the two guys that really did the design of the iPhone, as best I know. And Ives left, I guess, in 2019 after being there for 27 years and formed his own company. And guess who bought that company this week? OpenAI. Now, this is either going to be really great or it's going to be really bad, because the last group of people from Apple who went off and invented a device were those people who had the thing from Star Trek where you'd tap it on your chest. What was that called? I can't remember.
Human AI pin.
Human AI, that's it. Yeah, and they got the pin and it looked like the Star Trek thing, and they did the greatest product launch ever. It was so cool and sold nothing.
So Johnny, just to make that clear, like I think he's starting to become more of a household name than he used to be because of a lot of what's happening these days. But Johnny is the guy who is responsible for all of those designs. So Jobs was like a master marketer, and then you had Steve Wozniak, who was the tech. He was the brains that created the original Macintosh and and all the things that went behind it. But Ives was hired in between. Actually, he was hired, if I remember from correctly in the book, in between Steve Jobs' first ouster and his return. So somewhere in the middle, he was hired. And so, yes, he has been around for a long time, but he was stuck in a back corner somewhere, coming up with these cool designs and so forth. And one day Steve Jobs walked in and said, what the hell is this? And was just like blown away by the designs that this guy was coming up with. And then the whole of Apple's design philosophy changed that day from we're building these things to we're building a high-end product. We're building a lifestyle, a look, and so on. So Ives went off and started his own company called, interestingly enough, IO. Okay, which is interesting because we're going to be talking about Google I/O and Jupiter Moon I/O.
I have to say, every time and we're going to get to Google. Google survived this week because they were so great. But once again, OpenAI, when are you going to announce the deal with Johnny Ives? Right in the middle of Google I/O. And to poke them in the eye even further, Sam Altman, who I think is the greatest marketer since Steve Jobs, has bought a company called IO.
Yes, which is what happened last year's Google I/O. We're releasing deep research at a time when Google releases deep research. But Johnny's company IO, was a product design company. I'm not even sure that they actually have a product that was out there, but there's a video that you should look for on YouTube, and maybe we can link to that in the show notes. And somebody described it as a meet cute. You know what a meet cute is in movies?
A meet cute?
No. A meet cute. Okay, a meet cute is a Hollywood explanation of there's a
Yeah, I know
guy.
what that is.
He's sitting in a coffee shop and this woman
Yeah.
walks in and they look at each other across and a connection is made and he goes and walks over and sits down and they start to have a conversation and love blooms, right?
Yep.
So they did exactly the same thing with Johnny Ive and Sam Altman. Johnny is sitting in a cafe and Sam Altman walks in and they make eyes across and they sit down and they talk about what the future should look like. And they make a point of saying, this is not a takeover. This is a partnership. This is a merger. We're going to be creating this new transparent AI there's no product announced. We don't know what it is. We know that it's not going to be like a pair of glasses or anything like that, because apparently Altman hates things that you wear on your face or on your ears. He hates that sort of stuff. So he wants it to be something that's invisible, but nevertheless allows you to have access to the intelligence of the world without always having to have something else. And of course, this guy loves Apple. Altman loves Apple.
Okay.
And so for him, this is actually a really big deal. And so he goes on about this idea that they're going to announce something amazing in the next 12 months.
And we don't know what it is. They've been talking about this for 12 months. This is what I mean. You saw the human AI thing that was just terrible. The guy who invented the rabbit, actually, and this is what a legend Johnny Ives is for people. And I didn't know that much about him. I have to say that. And people are going to get to know him with whatever he comes up with Altman. Because like I said, they've been talking about it for a year. This is not a new idea. But the guy who invented the rabbit, that orange device and it's still around, by the way, he's still trying to make that company. Johnny Ives, I forget what Johnny Ives said to dismiss the rabbit as something. And this guy put out a whole blog post that I got razzed by Johnny Ives. This is what a god this guy is in terms of design. So whatever they're going to come up with, it's going to be astonishing. And that's going to be.
That's the premise. And the theory, the backroom talk is that this is going to make OpenAI $1 trillion. We're floating some amazingly big numbers here.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Integrating it into our lives is going to be the marketing challenge. Right now, and everybody's been saying that just all it does is answer questions, or all it does is this. Google blew that away this week. But also, we're going to see an integration in our lives. Matter of fact, I think one of those stories I did this week was that Zuckerberg has not given up on the metaverse.
And he shouldn't.
And he shouldn't. But he's been such a failure. He's only sold 2 million of these Ray-Ban glasses. 2 million. Only if you're running like a company as big as Meta could you say we only made 2 billion. We only got $2 billion in revenue from the metaverse. Only chump change, only 2 billion. Now they're still investing in it, and people are saying they're losing money. No, they're not losing money. They're investing in building this thing.
That's right.
This is nuts. Yeah. But I only sold 2 million of these glasses. I'm such a failure. If I could have failed this way just once in my career, I'd be living in a better house.
But they're also, I was doing some reading last night, and then they're talking about a pocket-sized product that they're talking to build that's not going to have a screen on it. And it's like they're already targeting it for late 2026. They already want to sell 100 million of them rapidly. And they're referring to it as it's an AI-powered consumer hardware, but they're not really saying exactly what it is. Or at least not that I've seen.
OpenAI, right? Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, OpenAI. Yes.
Have you heard of this guy, Jaron Lanier, and Jaron Lanier, Lanier, or Lanier?
I have not.
He's basically the guy more or less credited with inventing virtual reality. And he is also an absolutely fascinating guy. And I read a book by him 4 or 5 years ago when the Oculus headsets were starting to become a big thing. Yeah. And I'm surprise, I'm one of the early adopters of virtual reality. I've had everything from the original Google Cardboard to the first Oculus, to the Oculus Quest, to the Quest 2. And now I have a Meta Quest 3 as well. So I've been playing with this for a long time as well.
You have the helmet thing?
Yes.
So
yes.
Do you actually use it?
Yeah, regularly, daily.
You're
playing
the
video
one.
Games.
Okay, because they're gathering dust everywhere else.
No, they're not. There are a few million people who play with their Oculus, with their Meta Quests daily. So this is hardly like only one person who's sitting out there using this. I can go into multi-user places inside the Meta Quest, and they're always filled with people. There are tons of people playing. So this is not one-off. This is not something that nobody is using. I think that Mark Zuckerberg, I hate to give him this much credit, but he's right. And the reason I mentioned Jean Lanier, or however it's pronounced, really must figure.
It's only a French name,
Apologize.
Gagne.
I know, but he doesn't speak French, so I'm not.
Oh, he's anglicized it.
Need to find
I'll
out.
just do what I do with Claude. Just give it a French sound. Anyway, it makes him sound much more intelligent.
Jaron Lanier. Anyway,
Yep.
his vision is that what we're going to see is a metaverse, so to speak, that is superimposed on our world, powered by artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay. And all of those things are going to come together at some point. And the winner in all of this is going to be Mark Zuckerberg, because he did not abandon this thing. And we're going to see, like augmented reality glasses are coming. Augmented reality overlays of our world are coming. And there is one company and one person who is basically running this show, who has seen this coming and is still on board and is going to reap the rewards.
And I think too that anybody that thinks that this is going to be a fast moving thing, like getting from zero to completion, it's going to be a long game to get.
Yeah, this is taking 3 years.
I think that's one of the things that's going to be a bit of a differentiator too, is that the ones like Mark Zuckerberg, who can afford to sink money into it, knowing they're only selling 2 million glasses, but that they can say, but we're going to continue to put money into it. They're the ones that are going to survive. It's the other ones that are going to come in and go, oh yeah, we've got this great product, we're going to put it out, and nobody buys it because it's too early or it takes time for people to adopt it. I remember when the iPad first came out, I remember seeing one for the first time going, who the hell needs one of those?
Yeah,
and
You do, apparently.
yeah, absolutely. But that's what I mean.
Oh, yeah. And we laugh at the time. We say they've got to have the patience to do this. You know, it takes I think it takes about 6 years to develop a new model of a car. That's something we already have the basics of. The four wheels, the engine, the transmission. Like, to change the design of a car takes between 4 to 6 years. And we've turned The Matrix from a fiction into a documentary in 6 years, if this works out. And that's really, but it's just incredible to see. I can't remember who said it, but they were talking about the fact that you could only do huge programs. Oh, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson said going to Mars and going to the moon could only be done by governments. And because they had the ability to spend that amount of money over a long period of time and be able to take these great goals. Mark Zuckerberg is a small country.
Yeah.
And he can afford to do this. But you're right. And that might be why Altman's moving with Ives so as well, is that the real benefit of AI is not going to be super intelligence. It's going to be super integration. The chatbot you brought it on the show, and it was just having a conversation with that was as good as anything.
Yeah. Sesame.
Sesame, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
But we're already there. And so we've got the ability to have these relationships with AI. People do. But now, how can it influence our lives?
Okay, so let me ask a question to both of you, just to see where we are on this. Do either of you, on a daily basis, use voice mode on whether it's Google Gemini or ChatGPT, as in you turn on voice mode and you just have a conversation?
No.
I have not had big conversations. Usually at the dinner table is when I turn on. This is sick. I think my wife hates it. But if we're having a discussion about something, I'll turn on voice mode so I can ask ChatGPT about what we're talking about. And I found out some fascinating things. That hummingbirds, for instance, come back to the same nest because we're staring out the window. We got a hummingbird feeder. Instead of trying to pull up your PC.
Looking it up.
Looking it up.
But this is looking it up. Yeah, this is looking it up, though.
It's a new method of looking it up.
But the idea of having a conversation where you're talking, not you're having a conversation, you're bouncing ideas, you're going back and forth, you're being challenged by the AI, you're putting in your own perspective, it responds with its own perspective.
That's not to say I don't have a conversation, though. Because John and I talk by chat. He's another one of these guys who, like, we'll be talking all night over chat. Here's the game, do this sort of thing. And I've gotten used to that. So I have chats with ChatGPT.
Yes.
But I do it typing.
Yeah.
I'm texting.
I'm the same way. And I find probably the tool that I use the most these days is Perplexity.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
Me too. Better and better. I've used it for a research report. Yeah. Now, if
I used it last night in preparation for today's podcast.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's there. So anyways, as I predicted, Sam Altman did steal Google's thunder once again. But not totally, because they were, this was so incredible. The Google I/O blew me away. I could not believe that they could launch this much at once. They could finally be integrated. And finally, you had some sort of concept of, they're calling their AI the virtual assistant, and it could be there. And I didn't realize why Google stumbles like this culturally until I was listening to Mo Gadet, and the former Google executive who's now come out and starts talking about AI in our world. And he's a fascinating guy. I listened to a 2-hour podcast with Mo Gadet. I could have listened to him for another hour. He's just absolutely astonishing. But he said that Google didn't have marketing because, and Larry Page said that if you make something that's really great and fulfills a need, you don't need to market it. And that was the theory at Google, rightly or wrongly. Make something really great and you won't have to sell it to people. They'll just want it. And so that permeates the culture when you're trying to reshape a product that really is a marketing product and not a technical facility, because that's how they created AI. Everything's something technical out of their labs. You're supposed to put it together. Altman could have way less, but he'd put it all together into a vision.
Let me put my business hat on for a minute. And so when I look at all of this stuff from a corporate standpoint, and I mean, we've talked multiple times before that this is the reason why we went with Microsoft Copilot, because it integrates with the tools that we have. I will say that it's probably at the bottom of the rung of AI tools. Sorry, Microsoft, but the issue for us was it was integrated into the Microsoft suite that we were already using. It had the security in place that was tied in with the Microsoft security that we already had. And so to me, there's a whole bunch of other tools, but I'm just going to talk about Google and Microsoft for a second. To me, those are two AI products that have great potential to soar because they are integrated with the two primary tools that are used in business, either the Google suite or the Microsoft suite. In light of some of the things that we're going to talk about shortly, Google's going to just leapfrog way beyond where Microsoft's at. But one of the things that I wonder, though, is there's a ton of amazing tools out there. We've talked about Claude. We've talked about Perplexity. We've talked about a bunch of others that, from a corporate standpoint, how do you integrate them in? My hat always has a lens on security as well as functionality. And one of the issues that we had was with ChatGPT is how do you enforce the data security or privacy related with ChatGPT? I mean, I'm sure there's more of this now, but at one point it was check the box that says, don't use my information to train the model. Yeah, I turn that on. Somebody else can go in and turn it off. I wonder where a lot of these tools are going to end up. Are we going to end up with 50 different tools, or are some of them either going to go the way of the dodo bird, or are they going to get bought up by some of the bigger players?
History teaches us the reverse, right? When you think about Microsoft, they brought out an operating system, the Windows, and then And everybody thinks Windows dominated because of the operating system. Windows dominated because Bill Gates was smart enough to buy this crazy thing of these 3 products, a spreadsheet, a word processor, and PowerPoint, a presentation.
So killer app.
And he found the killer apps for his operating system. That's what happened. And people don't remember, he nuked better products. Lotus 1-2-3 was a far better spreadsheet than Microsoft's
VisiCalc.
spreadsheet. Yeah.
VisiCalc, yes.
It was a toy compared with what Lotus 1-2-3 could do. It had everything, including macros, all kinds of stuff. And by the way, it was a security nightmare in those days too. So there you go. But it was a fascinating, powerful tool. And Gates was smart enough to buy this thing. And the rest is history. Now, interestingly, I described Google earlier about being an engineering place that was doing this stuff, making the best product all around, never integrating them. Who cares? You'll figure it out. We've reversed and we talked about our meet cute with Johnny Ives. Well, we just had a breakup in the laundry room with Microsoft and OpenAI, and it's becoming obvious. There were rumors of screaming matches because Microsoft wanted to take over OpenAI, have their own AI, package it together. And so now Microsoft has a great packaging, but nothing underneath it, really. It's really not that good. And they're still going through this integration model. But OpenAI, they just took Grok in. And the reason why Microsoft can't have a relationship anymore, because they discovered they make more money hosting this stuff, trying to sell it to guys like you. And their hosting revenue has just gone out the moon. Their growth is incredible. AWS had the biggest market share, and Microsoft has had the biggest growth quarter over quarter. And a lot of it is outsourcing. They've taken on all these models. They
data
charge
centers,
them.
everybody.
Data centers. Yeah, they're out there making money. They're now the Levi Strauss of computing.
A business, and I'm not talking about a tiny business that can turn on a dime and sell something different tomorrow if they want to, but a large business needs stability. They have to know. And of course, we're seeing this. If ever there was a time to bring politics back into this, the whole tariff on, tariff off nonsense, there is no stability in the marketplace. And the stock market is showing this because it's up and down like a freaking yo-yo. It doesn't know what to do because it has no idea what the future is going to look like. But companies need stability. They need to know what the world is going to look like 6 months, 8 months down the road and so forth. And that is a good reason to go with something like Microsoft. Consumers don't we do, but we don't care. Okay. We will go with, this is the cool thing today. It does what I want it to do. And we're happy to switch the next day. And I think that's what companies like OpenAI can do really well. Let me just bring Claude into this for a second here, Anthropic.
Yes.
Do we actually have a sequence of things that we go through on the show? I'm just kidding. Anyway, Claude, we don't.
No, if that's not apparent by now, no.
But Claude, so Anthropic yesterday dropped Claude 4, Claude 4 Opus and Claude 4 Sonnet. So this week we're talking like Google I/O. Everything is going to be Google I/O. And then we get Sam Altman and Johnny Ive and the I/O partnership. And then Claude 4 comes out last. Everything is Anthropic now. But the reason that I bring Anthropic into it is the fact that we all love Claude. We really do. It has figured out its niche. I think it's decided that the whole idea of the chatbot, the interactive, we're having a conversation thing is not that they're bailiwick. Because now generate images, doesn't have interactive voice mode or anything like that. But what they've done is they've doubled down on coding and on business processes and on automation. And of course, the Model Context Protocol, MCP, which is now the thing. And then, of course, the fact that they are the favorite AI model for using coding tools like Cursor and Windsurf, which is interesting because Windsurf just got bought by OpenAI.
And Microsoft, talk about the argument with Microsoft and OpenAI. Microsoft made their tool open source. In other words, the day after Sam Altman spent
$3 billion
on Windsurf,
yep.
Microsoft made their coding tool open source and free. And if you tell me that Microsoft and OpenAI are getting along, because I think Microsoft has finally figured it out. Maybe Apple will too. OpenAI wants to be the next Apple.
Did you see the cover of The Atlantic? It says, it is now obvious what OpenAI's ambitions are. And there's the Chat GPT logo opened up like a Pac-Man teeth, and it's going to bite the Apple logo.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like,
No, I think that's
what
it.
OpenAI's ambitions are. OpenAI's ambitions are to be the next Apple.
Yeah. Or to be the successor to Apple. Because, it's really true. After Steve Jobs left, no matter how, Cook is a nice guy, but they have not, it's like that. There was a comedian, Gabe Kaplan, had this show, Welcome Back, Kotter. And there was a famous show. Everybody
Welcome back.
Yeah. And
Mr. Kotter.
Yeah, Gabe Kaplan brought his stand-up act back to Montreal and the Just for Laughs Festival, which is one of the biggest comedy festivals in the world in Montreal. It's just, anyway, but his opening line was, and this is a way, after you've been off for 15 years and he comes in, he says, I was walking through the airport and this lady came back to me and she said, this old lady, she comes up to me, she says, aren't you Welcome Back, Kotter? And he said, yeah. He said, you ain't done shit since, have you? And it's true. He made a lot of money and he went out playing
done for me lately.
Yeah. But this is the Apple story. After Steve Jobs, there's only so long you can mine the genius. Sorry. Is your iPhone any better than it was in 2019?
And Siri still doesn't work.
Well, yeah,
don't forget Apple Intelligence.
The oxymoron, Apple Intelligence. Yeah. But Altman thinks he can be legitimately a successor to Apple. And I think that Microsoft sees that coming. But Google this week, we're going to keep coming back to Google this week because they did incredible things. And even though everyone dumps on Google now, Claude makes the announcement, this is the greatest AI that Claude could have, and they announce it the same week.
Okay, so I swear to God, we're going to go back to Google, but the coolest or the most interesting thing to me from the Claude announcement was this. Claude has been seen as the AI model with the most personality as well as the best one for coding.
Yep.
Okay. But personality, people talk about a model's personality, and that's a big deal. As somebody who uses these things a lot, I do find that I lean toward one versus the other, primarily because of that personality and communication. But Claude 4 has aspects of it that are Machiavellian, if you will. It is more likely to try to direct things and they even did a test where they had to pretend that you're the head of a corporation or something like this, and you're trying to push through some agenda or whatever. And Claude would go and read emails and find out that one of the engineers was sending text that sounded like he was having an affair with somebody. And to push its agenda, it sent an email to the engineer saying, you wouldn't want this affair to come out to your wife, would you? Like, if you don't do what I say, or you try to replace the product that I'm putting in place here, it's a nice life that you've been having. It'd be a shame if you lost it. So they actually are recognizing, this was Claude 4 Opus. And
this marriage you got there, wouldn't want for something to happen to it, right?
And yet they still released it with just some tweaks as opposed to pulling it back. And you got to remember, at one time, Anthropic was the company. Dario Amodei made a big deal of the idea. We've got this constitutional AI that makes sure that keeps watch on the other one to make sure that it doesn't do anything like that. So now they've just said, AI safety, fuck it. Let's just put it in.
Yeah. But when I was writing the book, I had nobody to talk to. I would talk to Claude. But I would ask it stuff and say, what do you think about this?
I just talk to myself.
Yeah. No, but that's how sad is that? No, but I needed somebody I could talk to about, sorry, but you guys are fun. Yeah.
I talked to this guy.
Yeah. No, come on. Let's be serious here. I'm trying to talk to somebody about the physics of the brain and quantum physics. And I don't have a lot of friends I can phone up and say, look, you got 15 minutes for me on quantum physics. And there are a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me. I get that. But I don't know if I could talk to them. Like Roger Penrose stopped taking my calls. I don't know why. But I could talk to this thing about quantum physics, what research had been done, whether this made sense. And it was incredible. And I don't think because my poor wife, she listens to me rabid on about this stuff until finally she says, that's enough. And because she doesn't care. She's a smart lady, but God forbid you just talk about something normal. Yeah.
Like your music or something.
Yeah. No, we have no problem talking about music or anything like that. I think it's sad if you're talking to an AI because you have no friends. But if you have no friends and you can't make any, better you talk to somebody. But to talk to somebody on an expert level or to collaborate with somebody on an idea in a way. And I thought I was never going to really talk about this in public that much. And then Mo Gadet outed me. And I was listening to him. He's writing a book with an AI and they're having a conversation. And he actually believes that book, the conversation between him and the AI, will now form part of the material that the next AI will learn from. And he's quite open about it. And he's richer than me. I'm certain he's probably smarter than me too, but he's not as good looking. But
Oh, of course.
But Meatloaf was right. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Where did we get to with this? Why are we here?
I don't know. Were we ever going to talk about what Google did for
Google? I'm going to call this episode Finally Talking About Google.
It was an amazing presentation. It was about 3 hours long, if you could actually sit through the whole thing. I confess that I went and looked at the capsule. Like there was somebody about 6, 8 hours later put out a video that was 10 or 12 minutes long.
Somebody took AI and chopped the video down.
Yeah. So thank you to that enterprising person. Even if you are an AI, I don't really care at this point. But Google did have an awful lot of interesting things that they came out with. And one of the biggest things for me very shortly after that, if you take a look and you open up Google Gemini at this point and you go up to the top, you'll notice that there aren't 100 different models anymore. But if I take a look, if I open it up, there are 3 things up top: 2.5 Flash, 2.5 Pro, in preview in brackets, and personalization preview. Personalization is the AI knows everything about you based on your search history. And that one I find incredibly fascinating because despite all of the warnings about the fact that this thing is going to know everything about you, I actually want my AI to know everything about me because that is how it will serve me best, by knowing my history, by knowing what I like.
It's also how you'll serve it best.
Yes.
Life sucks. Okay.
Yeah. No,
but I come on, I have to say it at least once here. I, for one, welcome our AI overlord.
Yeah.
But so that is the first thing, is the release of 2.5 for like across the board. They've settled on 2.5. So all these weird ass naming conventions that you would see when you had the drop down box have been incredibly simplified. And Project Astra, remember when we talked about Project Astra, where it could look through the lens of the world around you and interact in real time? That is now open and available throughout the whole Google suite, whether it's on your desktop, whether it's on the Android or the other one, Apple application. That I got to stop. Project Astra is now live across the board. Sorry, go ahead.
Is it on the iPhone too?
I'm assuming it must be on the iPhone.
I'm going to go check for it because that was one of the best things that Google came up with.
The whole real-time thing is live on my Android, so I assume that's live as well. And of course, what's Google's biggest moneymaker? Advertising. Yet they have finally embraced the idea of AI, and now they have AI mode in search.
This was one of the biggest things that was holding them back. And this is the classic thing of a legacy company having a problem adapting. But this is a classic thing. We have a product that is making tons of money. We got this thing, Kodachrome, and we're just making bags of money. Or we got a phone that we're still selling. Sound like anybody in particular. And forget the iPhone. The whole idea of parting with your current product and cannibalizing that is the hardest thing for a huge legacy company. You have to go back to your shareholders and say, we're going to give up all the revenue we're going to make from this fantastically promising product that makes us who we are, and we're going to give that up so we have a chance at making more money in this new world. That's a difficult decision. But Google has had the courage to tackle this now, and they finally moved search into, they've accepted the fact that their pay-per-click model is going to die. And that there have been big fights over this, by the way, in Google. This did not happen overnight. But suddenly they woke up and said, AI search is coming. We're going to either give it all to Altman or we're going to learn how to work it. But if you're in the marketing industry right now, first of all, there's pay-per-click. Why would you have it? I ask Google. It tells me what I want to know. I don't even have to go to your website. And now for me, for the consumer, that's wonderful because I now go to your website if I want to buy the thing from you. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't have to go there. Google will tell me. And if it wasn't Google, I was using Perplexity. I didn't go visit anybody's website. Even my blessed Canadian Tire. I ask them whether the Canadian Tire in Minden has this part. I ask Perplexity. And it tells me, yeah, it's in stock. I'm buying dog treats for my dog. Walmart's out of them. And it's the only place you can buy these things. And my dog is picky. Like my dog will starve to death rather than not eat the treats that it wants. What do? I go on to Perplexity and I say, I got to find these dog treats. Where can I get them? Cobalt, Ontario at a flea market. And they'll ship them to you. Now, that would have taken me in the old world a morning. But 2 minutes, done. Got the answer, had the order placed, and they shipped 25 of them to me. Google can do this better than anybody, but it's going to cost them. And it's going to change the whole industry. All the people who did SEO. Remember SEO, where you try to get your website so they can see it by Google and you can be a part of a list of websites? Kiss that crap goodbye. You're going to have to find a way to suck up to the AI now. And
that's why we have AIO. Artificial Intelligence Optimization.
Yep. You're going to start to see all those. You'll get these ads, not for SEO anymore. You'll get these guys who say, I can get you to the top of Google's, but you're not going to be the top of the page. You're going to be the one that
I'm good friends. I'm good friends with Gemini, and do you work with me and my buddy Gemini?
We'll get you a backstage pass with Gemini.
So that's a huge.
I have no idea what that accent was.
Now,
I apologize.
Me either, but yeah. but now that they've gotten past that, they can now turn the search into something that does everything, which is what I've just wanted. And now, Marcel, here's how I am. I bought Gemini when I set up the publishing company that I have now. I went in and I bought a URL and I had my own email. So that's where we get editorial at technewsday.ca is set up with Google. Now my search works. Click. Hey, I did a story on Foxconn. I want to go back and check my Foxconn story. But I don't want to go and watch the video. I can't watch a video of me again or listen to me again. I want to go back to the script I wrote. Where did I put the script? I keep them fairly well organized, but type in there, I need to know the story about Foxconn. Here it is, Jim. That's what happens. That's what makes your life easier. The average employee, I've seen these stats before, spends about 3 hours a day or something like that looking for shit.
Right. The whole integration that you were talking about before is that things, and this is why I'm saying that Google is just going to, they're already doing well, but this whole piece is just going to launch them even further because of the integration. Everything just works together.
And they're going to integrate into cars now as well.
This is what this morning, Jim. They were smart enough now to know that Sam Altman's going to come in. They're going to have their event. People are going to make announcements. They had Volvo ready to say, we're going to put this into the Volvo now. Now, how useful is that? And the story I did was, and this is what is just so freaking useful. This is what makes me just so crazy about liking it, is when you're driving along, I don't care about the stereo. I can turn that on. That's great that I've got these great voice commands that it can never hear, that I can never do anything with. But maybe that's just with the road noise. But how many times have you been you're listening to your map and it says something. Can I finally talk to it and say, I don't want to take the shortest route. I want you to reroute me to this. Or I'm looking at this. You've taken me to a place that doesn't exist. And I really need to find my way back, if you're driving. Or better still, has anybody ever read their car manual? Ever? But isn't it when you're driving down the 401, isn't it useful to be able to say, what's that light?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so this is actually a Google. Excuse me for a second. Hi, Google. It's me, Marcel. I would really like it if you did this Gemini integration and put it into Google Auto so that I don't have to buy a Volvo, because my car already has Google Auto because of this little thing that I've got on my dashboard. And I would like to just be able to talk to it in normal human language and ask questions and reroute like Jim just talked about. Thanks, Google. I look forward to seeing that.
It's okay, Marcel. I've got that covered. However, Volvo has paid the money so they'll get it first. So if you get a Volvo,
Damn it.
you'll get it first. But it'll only be a few weeks, Marcel, and I'll be there for you as I always am.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Google. I really appreciate that.
So I'm driving a rental vehicle right now because we talked about my truck, but I'm driving a Ford Explorer that has Google Maps built in, so you don't need Android Auto or CarPlay to use Google Maps. And oddly enough, it has YouTube built into it. So I guess I'm sure you can't watch YouTube videos while you're driving, so it must be
Sure you
only when
can.
you're stopped.
Sure
But-
you can. Just don't text while you're doing it.
But I wonder if I was intrigued to see Google Maps built into these, not the Ford map or whatever. And so, Marcel, there's hope that maybe this will be the way of the future, that they have all of this, not all, but some of this Google functionality built right in so that you can talk to your map in your car. And
Really
Jim can
smart
talk
way-
to his car because nobody else will listen to him. Yes.
That's true. But if they're really smart right now, somebody is out there taking MCP to these
Yes.
car owners so that your AI can talk directly to it no matter what it is. And that's the only remedy that could save this Google integration. And that would be actually a great thing because you don't need to build this into your car. That's rather dumb, actually. If it's already built into your phone.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
I said, I've got this little display on my dashboard. I added after the fact because I have a 2007 Camry, but I added this thing after the fact, and Google Auto automatically comes up when I sit in the car. And for the most part, it actually works really well. But I would love that integration. Let's face it, I always wanted KIT. Remember KIT? Knight Industries
Yep.
2000?
Oh, yeah. Who didn't want
You know,
KIT?
I wanted that car so bad.
Yeah, me too. And
I
Elon
bought a
Musk,
plastic
the crazy
model of
thing
it
is
and put it
Elon
together.
Musk could have built that stupid car if he hadn't wasted his time on the Cybertruck.
Yeah.
No Elon talk today. Okay, so I
Yeah.
know we're going to run out of show time here, but let's quickly run down some of the other things that
Yep.
Google put. First of all, they put out a new version of VEO, the VO engine.
Yes,
VO2
isn't it
was
cool?
already amazing. Now they've got VO3, and VO3 integrates everything, not just amazing video, amazing understanding of real world and physics. This is the first time you can look at an AI video and go, is this AI? Like how you try to look for those artifacts that tell you that you're looking at an AI video and they're just not there. It is phenomenal. If you take a look on YouTube and you look for some of the VO3 things that people have done just in the last couple of days, it's mind boggling. The video not only does great video and physics, but it does sound effects. It does multiple voices across characters. It can track which character is saying what. Background sounds, like everything is integrated into these final video products. And it's nothing short of mind boggling. The idea of creating a movie, so to speak, from prompts is finally here. And Google added something called FLOW, and it is their own AI video editor because VO3 still only generates 8-second long clips. But now you can extend those clips with flow and do cutting and pasting and interacting. What they were trying to do with Sora, but it never actually really.
They fished the job. I can actually envision using this. I would never use Sora to do anything. I went on.
No.
And I said, my problem is, what can I do with it? I made a cute video. I want to spend my afternoon making cute videos that are 5 seconds long. That's great. I need marketing videos. I need a trailer for this thing. I need these types of videos that I want to make. And now I can do that.
There's bad news though, Jim. Do you want to know the bad news? Jim, John, would you like to hear the bad news? $250 US a month.
Yeah.
And right now it's only available in the US. Okay. And a VPN won't get you there. Tried it. A VPN won't get you there. You can get like the first 3 months for $150 or something like that, just to get a feel for it. And VO3 doesn't actually give you unlimited generations. You get a certain number of credits, which is still a fair bit, but $250 a month is a lot of money. It's called Gemini Ultra. So you've got the regular product, which is the Pro product, which was what I pay for monthly, which is like $31 Canadian or something like this is what it works out to. And now you've got this Ultra product. And I can see people using it because some of the smarts that are being wrapped into the new Gemini product are so insane, wrapped up with this whole idea of being able to do commercial level video generation. It sounds like a lot of money to you and I, but for somebody
Marcel,
whose business is...
if I wanted to get somebody to make an animated YouTube video for me, it would cost me at least $600, $700, $800 to get something rudimentary, maybe more. US. I can now sign up for this thing for $250, make all the trailers I need for the year, and then resign from it. If I was doing that, I needed a video a month, $250. And by the way, we do need sponsors for this program because I can't afford this. But $250 a month for that is trivial if it can put together an actual video. Now, my son is now going to be even more out of work, but I'm hoping, and it's so funny because I was talking to him and he is part of the younger arts group that is totally rejected AI. He just has nothing to do with it. But I'm hoping that he'll wake up and take a look at it and say, if I could be better at using this than anybody else, I could have a really great career. But
become a VO3 expert.
I'm not going to interfere with that.
Yeah, it's not a question of becoming an expert. It's a question of, first of all, accepting the fact, like, people have this, I am an artist as well. Jim is an artist. If you're a musician, if you're a writer, if you've made a living like this in the past, you understand this stuff. There's this idea that part of creativity, part of being an artist, of being a creator, is the work that you put into it, all the time that you put into it. And I don't know who said this. I heard this recently. It's 10% inspiration, 90%.
90%.
Okay. And now we're shifting that around. It's 90% inspiration, 10% perspiration. So the fact is, if you want to create something, people have this weird idea that you just say, make me a movie, and that's all it takes. No, that's not all it takes. You still have to have a vision. You still have an idea of what it is you're trying to bring to life. You still do storyboarding. You still go through ideas, who's talking to who, what happens next, blah, blah, blah. So you have to have some kind of a vision to string all of these 8-second clips into a final product that somebody is going to watch. It requires creativity. It requires agency from a human being. And that is, I think, what the anti-AI crowd needs to accept. And a lot of my friends are writers and artists and musicians. I get that. I totally get it. And I'm usually the guy in the room. If I'm in the room with all these people, it's let's not talk about AI. Marcel is here. But I think that once you can get over that hurdle, okay, and accept that your job as an artist is to bring a vision to life, whatever it happens to be. And if you can skip a whole pile of tedious work and concentrate on your vision, on your creativity while you're bringing these things to life, you haven't lost anything. In fact, what you've done is you've enhanced your ability to bring that vision to life.
Yep. But bringing this back to Google, this whole thing of this is going to eliminate jobs. This is going to make people more efficient. This is going to be able to do a whole pile of things. Like I said, I don't know of how many hours a person spends looking for stuff. I know how many hours I spend looking for stuff, and I'm no longer in a corporate career, so all that time goes. The ability to produce videos directly from where you are, the ability to create things and finally create things where it'll say to you, do you want me to clean up that email for you? Nothing wrong with that. And I'm not going to ask it to write an email for me. I don't need that. But I really hate proofreading. Oh my God. To be able to click on it and say, correct all the spelling and Mr. Oxford comma here. I'm not going to even talk to him about that. But I wanted to know whether I should use a colon or a dash in something. And I couldn't remember exactly the rule structure for it, but I'm done. Here's where you use a colon. Here's where you use a dash. Oh, thank you. And God forbid I can even know because I got crazy and asked about, okay, what's the difference between a semicolon and a colon for this? And stuff I haven't thought about in ages. And I went, oh.
Living on the edge, Jim.
Yeah, I know. This is my life. But it cleans up my writing and offers me a chance to use different punctuation exactly, not just where I felt it was, because I really didn't know the rules anymore, but I would put the stuff in because that's where it seemed to fit. And when you write, like I said, when you're writing a book, The editors get really picky about punctuation. I don't know why.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So but that's what I mean about adding efficiency, putting it into one place so you don't have, the average person doesn't want to look through 12 models and go, oh yeah, I use model number 9, which is the third model they developed. But I've got to
Mambo number 5 is something entirely different.
So I'm going to find that to use to do this task. Finally, it just says, hey, Google. Oh God.
Oh, he said that.
It missed me.
A little bit of Google by my side, a little bit of Claude on. No, sorry.
Yeah, no. It won't come talking to me again. Okay, that's good. And if they can make that stupid thing smarter, that will be my next hope.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if they could tie those things into all of these other fancy features and functionality within their suite?
Yeah. But they've come out, they went a long way with this. And like I said, this was not just we integrated. This was breakthrough after breakthrough. So you got Flow, Android, that 2.5 model of Flow is absolutely astonishing in intelligence. And they put out a 1.5 model, which is really light, much cheaper, and can be used in mobile types of things and still incredibly smart. And the 2.5 model is blowing, on all of the benchmarks, seems to be blowing everything out of the water as well. Like Google really brought their A game, which I wish the Leafs would have done. But
so
that's another thing.
Somebody on our Discord, the Project Synapse Discord, you'll see I actually posted a video of a car show that was all generated with VO3 if you want to get an idea of just how incredible this was. But somebody also mentioned that they've been playing with the Gemma 3, which was something else that was released. Just before the show, I actually loaded Gemma 3, the 4 billion parameter model. I loaded it into LM Studio this morning. I'm looking at it over here, and it is peppy as hell. The idea of the Gemma 3 type models was creating small, extremely efficient, extremely good models that you could then integrate into any kind of product development that you wanted without it having this massive footprint. And did a couple of things beforehand. One of the things I asked it for was start with $1,000 until I can turn it into $1 million in a year. And it said, it basically told me, you're asking for a lot, but I'll take you seriously. And here we go. And it wrote a whole bunch of ideas about how you might want to do that. It did it quickly enough that this is probably the first time that I could envision running one of these models locally. Google has shown some amazing things. And they also showed off like a bunch of other things. They showed their own version of Android XR, their XR glasses and so on. So the idea that somehow the metaverse is dead, Google doesn't think so either. So again, I think the Zoot is bang on this one. There is a future integration of artificial intelligence and AI, and Project Astra, married with Android XR is what's coming down the road for that.
That's what the problem with the glasses was, not that they looked geeky. It was that they didn't.
And they don't anymore though.
Yeah, but they fixed that. But I have to say, if the glasses had Project Astra in them, that anything I looked at, I could get the information on it. If I could communicate with it vocally in a conversation and get stuff back as quickly as you're talking about with Gemma, instead of pulling out a phone, how dumb does it look pulling out a phone and doing all this stuff?
Yes.
I have come this close several times to picking up a pair of Meta Ray-Bans. Really close. And the only reason I haven't done it is because I can do most of that with my earbuds. I've got a different set for doing the show here, but I have a pair of Google Pixel Buds Pro, and I can just touch my ear and ask it questions and have it do things. So it's ridiculously simple, but what it can't do is see, right?
Don't tell me that Marcel's going to push us to the dark side and end up getting us into Android and Google stuff.
No, the beautiful thing about the beautiful thing of this is that this is the great thing about competition. Apple's either going to lie down by the side of the road and die, or they're going to get their thumb out of their bum, and they're going to come up with something that is equally as good quickly. Because if they don't,
they're going to have to do it quickly.
They need, and they better have been working. And Apple's so secretive. You never know what they're going to do. But if they don't do this, they're going to lose. And that, I don't even know if we can conceive of that in this era, that Apple falls off by the wayside. They have so much bloody money and so many great minds there that they've got to be working on something. But the reality is, no matter how we stack it, you will be looking through a set of glasses or something that will, and we don't know what it's going to look like, but the foundation is there now. And that's, people are finally bringing this together into something that you could say, yeah, that's a virtual assistant. And that's where our job changes come. Like I said, the first thing is we'll automate all the stuff that's easy to automate. And that's coming whether people like it or not. But the second thing is we'll make ourselves 5 times or 6 times as productive. And that changes everything. I never thought I'd be happy to see Google coming back like this. It's almost like the schadenfreude of Google is there, but now it's like you're looking at them going, yeah, good to see you back.
But this is that whole leapfrog thing that we've talked about before, that OpenAI does something amazing, and then Google does something, and then Claude does something, and then OpenAI does something even better. And I think we're going to continue to see this on an ongoing basis. Who knows where it'll stop, but and that's where I was saying before that I think it really is going to boil down to who can't keep up is going to either get bought out or they're going to fall by the wayside. They'll become specialty.
Yeah. Every once in a while, we all need a kick in the pants. I think that's what's happening with these big players right now. The reason you're seeing stuff coming out fast and furious is it's being driven by AI development, used in AI development. Yep. And then, of course, the market forces of the kick in the pants for all of these companies. So they just keep responding to that.
Yeah. And now, because we always put this in terms of old movies and stuff like that. Remember that movie where it was Carrie, where the hand comes out of the grave at the end of it, and because you can't kill it? The Chinese are going to make this all open source. That will be interesting. They're not going to sit back and they're watching all this stuff. I can't wait to see where the next DeepSeek moment comes on this. I've spent $36 billion doing this, and it's free. Oops.
It'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow, the next day, next week, next month. There's no point saying next year because that's like an eternity from now. But
yep. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Good to be here. Fun hanging out with you guys each week.
Yeah. John Pinard, thanks for coming in.
It's enlightening.
If you're on YouTube. And that's our show. Love to hear what you think about it. You can reach me at editorial@technewsday.ca. You can find me on LinkedIn, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you know what to do. Just put a comment under the video. I'm your host, Jim Love. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you Monday morning when I'm back with the news on #Trending.